The space station hung in the darkness like a giant silver wheel. Its name was Celestial Nexus, and it floated near a planet called Veritas Prime. This was not just any space station. It was the place where different alien species came to talk, to trade, and to make deals. 17 different civilizations sent their people here. Some were friendly, some were not. Taeyang Kim stood near a large window that looked out into space. He was 42 years old, with short black hair that was starting to turn gray at the sides. His suit was simple and dark blue, nothing fancy. He did not look like someone important, but he was. Taeyang was Earth's diplomat, the person who spoke for all humans at these big meetings. Behind him stood 2 other humans. One was Heejin Park, a young woman of 28 with sharp eyes and quick hands that were always working on her datapad. She was Taeyang's assistant, and she knew more about alien cultures than anyone else on Earth. The other was Minji Choi, a tall woman with broad shoulders who used to be in the military. She was there to keep Taeyang safe, though she never carried a weapon where others could see it. The 3 of them had come to the Celestial Nexus for a summit. A summit was a big meeting where everyone talked about important things like trade routes, resources, and who controlled what part of space. Humans had only been part of these meetings for 30 years. Compared to other species who had been traveling through space for thousands of years, humans were like children. Many of the alien species looked down on humans. They thought Earth was a small, unimportant planet. They thought humans were weak and primitive. Some of them said it out loud. Others just thought it but stayed quiet. Today was different, though. Today, someone said it very loud. The main hall of the station was huge. The ceiling was so high you could not see where it ended. Lights of different colors hung in the air, floating without wires. Aliens of all shapes and sizes walked around, talking in languages that sounded like music or grinding metal, or wind through trees. Some had fur, some had scales, some looked almost human, and some looked like nothing Taeyang had ever seen before. Taeyang was talking with an ambassador from the Voran coalition when he heard the voice. It was loud and young and full of confidence that came from never being told no. The voice belonged to Prince Valaxis. Valaxis was from the Dranoth Empire, one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. The Dranoth looked somewhat like humans, but taller and thinner, with skin that had a slight blue tint and eyes that were too large and too bright. They were an old species, and they never let anyone forget it. Prince Valaxis was only 19 years old, which was very young even for his species. He had never worked a day in his life. Everything had been given to him. He wore expensive clothes that shimmered with colors that changed as he moved. Around him stood 6 other Dranoth, all older, all watching him with careful eyes. The prince walked across the hall toward Taeyang. His steps were slow and confident. People moved out of his way. When he reached Taeyang, he stopped and looked down. The Dranoth were taller than humans, and Valaxis used that height to make himself seem more important. Taeyang turned to face him. His expression did not change. He simply waited. Valaxis smiled, but it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who enjoyed hurting others. "So this is the human diplomat," Valaxis said. His voice carried across the hall. Other conversations stopped. Everyone turned to watch. "I have heard so much about your species. Tell me, is it true that your planet only has one language now because you all killed each other until only a few were left?" Taeyang said nothing. He kept his face calm. Valaxis continued, "I also heard that humans only discovered faster than light travel because they stole it from a crashed alien ship. Is that true? Are you all thieves as well as savages?" The hall was completely silent now. Heijin's hand tightened on her datapad. Minji took a small step forward, but Taeyang raised one hand slightly, telling her to stop. The prince leaned closer. "And you," he said, pointing at Taeyang, "you are supposed to represent your entire species? You look so ordinary, so plain, like a servant, not a leader. Tell me, do all humans look as unimpressive as you?" Some of the Dranoth around Valaxis laughed quietly. Other aliens in the hall looked away, embarrassed for Taeyang. A few looked angry on his behalf, but they said nothing. This was the Dranoth Empire. You did not challenge them unless you were ready for war. Taeyang stood there for a long moment. He looked at Valaxis. He looked at the other Dranoth. He looked at all the aliens watching, waiting to see what the human would do. Everyone expected anger. They expected shouting. They expected threats. That was what young species did when insulted. They reacted with emotion. But Taiyang did none of those things. He simply turned around and walked away. He did not say a single word. He did not look back. He just walked toward the exit with steady, calm steps. Hyejin followed immediately. Minji paused just long enough to look at Valaxis with cold eyes. Then she turned and followed as well. The silence in the hall was even deeper than before. This was not the reaction anyone expected. Species who were insulted usually fought back with words or threats. They defended themselves. They demanded apologies. But walking away, saying nothing at all, it was strange. It was confusing. And it was somehow more powerful than any angry speech could have been. Prince Valaxis stood there with his mouth slightly open. He had expected a fight. He had wanted to humiliate the human further. But the human gave him nothing. No reaction at all. It felt like hitting air. One of the older Draenoth, Ambassador Wraith, stepped forward. He was a dignified alien with white hair and eyes that had seen many wars. He put a hand on the prince's shoulder and spoke quietly, but some nearby aliens heard him. "You should not have done that," Wraith said. Valaxis pulled away from him. "Why not? He is just a human. They are nothing." Wraith shook his head slowly. "That is what worries me." Back in their quarters, Taiyang sat down in a chair and closed his eyes. The quarters were simple, nothing like the fancy rooms the Draenoth had. Just 3 small rooms with basic furniture. Hyejin paced back and forth. She was angry. "Why did you just walk away?" she asked. "He insulted you. He insulted all of us. We should file a complaint with the council. We should demand an apology." Taiyang opened his eyes. "And what would that accomplish?" "It would show we do not accept being treated like that." Taiyang stood up and walked to the window. Would it? Or would it show exactly what Valaxis wanted? That we are emotional, that we react without thinking, that we are easy to provoke. Hyejin stopped pacing. "But we have to do something." "We will," Taiyang said. "Contact Earth. Tell them what happened. And tell them to begin Protocol 7. Hyejin's eyes widened. Protocol 7 was not something they used lightly. It meant withdrawing from all activities. It meant going silent. It meant cutting ties. "Are you sure?" she asked. Taiyang nodded. "Words will not teach Valaxis anything, but absence will." Minji spoke for the first time since they returned. "The galaxy is watching now. They saw what happened. Whatever we do next will set the tone for how humans are treated for years to come." "Exactly," Taiyang said. "So we will show them that humans do not beg for respect. We do not fight for scraps of dignity. Either they treat us as equals or they do without us entirely." Hyejin took a deep breath and nodded. She pulled out her secure communication device and began composing the message to Earth. Outside, in the Great Hall, the other species continued their meetings. But everyone was talking about the same thing. The human who said nothing. The human who simply walked away. And they wondered what it meant. 3 days passed. In those 3 days, Taiyang did not attend a single meeting. He did not speak at any of the council sessions. He did not join the other diplomats for meals or conversations. Earth's delegation stayed in their quarters, quiet and invisible. This was very unusual. Diplomats came to these summits to be seen and heard. They wanted attention. They wanted influence, but the humans seemed to want nothing at all. The other species started to talk. Some thought the humans were sulking like children. Others thought they were planning something. A few, like Ambassador Wraith of the Draenoth, felt worried. On the 4th day, an official announcement came from Earth. It was short and cold. Earth was suspending all trade agreements with the Draenoth Empire, effective immediately. No explanation was given. No demands were made. Just a simple statement of fact. The news spread through the celestial nexus like fire. Species that had trade relationships with both Earth and the Draenoth suddenly became very nervous. The humans were not asking for anything. They were not threatening anyone. They were simply stopping. Prince Valaxis heard about it while eating his morning meal. He laughed. "Let them stop," he said to his advisors. "What do we need from those primitives anyway?" But Ambassador Wraith did not laugh. He called for an emergency meeting with the Draenoth economic ministers. When they gathered in a private room, Wraith showed them the numbers. The Draenoth Empire bought many things from Earth. There were rare minerals that only existed on Earth and a few other planets. There were medical compounds made from Earth plants that could not be grown anywhere else. There were technological components that human engineers had learned to make better and cheaper than anyone else. Without these things, Draenoth factories would slow down. Their hospitals would run out of important medicines. Their military ships would need to find new suppliers, and those suppliers would charge much more money. "How much will this cost us?" one minister asked. "Billions," Wraith said quietly. Every day the ministers looked at each other. "Surely the humans will negotiate," one said. "They must want something." Wraith shook his head. "I have tried to contact them. They will not respond. They do not answer our messages. They do not take our calls. It is as if we do not exist." Meanwhile, Hyejin worked day and night in the human quarters. She sent messages to Earth, coordinated with government officials, and monitored the reactions from other species. Several alien ambassadors tried to contact Taiyang. They wanted to understand what was happening. Some offered to mediate between Earth and the Draenoth. Some wanted to make sure Earth would still honor agreements with their own civilizations. Taiyang met with a few of them. He was polite but firm. "Earth has no quarrel with your people," he told each one. "Our agreements with you will continue as normal. This matter concerns only the Draenoth." One ambassador, a tall being made of what looked like living crystal, asked the question everyone wanted answered. "What do you want from them? What will make you resume trade?" Taiyang was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "We want nothing from them." The ambassador seemed confused. "Then why do this?" "To show that we can," Taiyang replied. "To show that Earth does not need to be part of a galaxy that treats us with disrespect. We will be fine on our own. The question is whether they will be fine without us." Back on Earth, Soranam sat in her office high above the ocean. She was the head of Earth's Interstellar Trade Commission. On her screens, she watched the numbers change. Trade with 12 different species was increasing. They were buying more from Earth, trying to secure supplies before Earth might cut them off too. A message came through from Ji-Ho Lee, the defense minister. His face appeared on her screen. "The military is ready if needed," he said, "but I do not think it will come to that." "Neither do I," Sora replied. "The Draenoth are proud, but they are not stupid. They will realize soon enough." On the 7th day, Prince Valaxis was summoned to meet with his father, Emperor Draxion. The emperor was very old and very powerful. He had ruled the Draenoth Empire for 70 years. He did not summon his son for pleasant conversations. The prince entered the emperor's chamber on the Draenoth homeworld. The emperor sat on a throne that floated above the ground, surrounded by advisors and guards. His face was hard as stone. "Tell me," the emperor said, his voice cold and sharp, "why are we losing 8 billion credits per day because you could not control your tongue?" Valaxis felt a chill run through him. He had never seen his father this angry. "Father, I only spoke the truth. Humans are— I do not care what you think humans are," the emperor shouted. The sound echoed through the chamber. Everyone else stepped back. "You insulted them in front of the entire galaxy. You made them look weak. And what did they do? They made us weak instead. They made us look like fools, but father, silence." The emperor raised one hand. 3 of our colonies are reporting shortages. Our military cannot finish building the new fleet because we do not have the components we need. And all of this because you wanted to feel superior for 5 minutes. Valaxis looked down at the floor. He had never thought about any of this. He never considered that his words would have real consequences. "You will fix this," the emperor said. "You will apologize." The prince's head snapped up. "Apologize to humans? Father, our people will think we are weak." The emperor leaned forward. "Our people already think we are weak. They see the news. They see the shortages. They see other empires laughing at us. The only way to fix this is to make it right. I will not apologize to an inferior species." The emperor stood up. His voice dropped to a whisper, which was somehow more frightening than his shouts. "Then you will watch as this empire suffers because of your pride. Get out of my sight." Valaxis left the chamber, his face burning with shame and anger. He still believed he was right, but for the first time in his life he felt the weight of consequences. Back on the Celestial Nexus, other species were taking notice of what was happening. The Voran Coalition, a group of advanced civilizations, sent a private message to Earth. They expressed their respect for how Earth was handling the situation. They also proposed new trade agreements, better than the ones Earth had before. The Elthari, a species known for their wisdom and philosophy, published an open letter praising human dignity and restraint. It was shared across thousands of planets. Even the Kynar Dominion, a mysterious civilization that rarely spoke to anyone, sent a message to Taiyang. They wanted to open diplomatic relations with Earth. They had been watching humans for years, and this incident proved that humanity was worth their attention. Hyejin showed these messages to Taiyang. "Look at this," she said, her voice full of excitement. "Every species that matters is reaching out to us. We are gaining more allies in 2 weeks than we have in 30 years. Taiyang read through the messages carefully. "Good," he said, "but we do not celebrate yet. The real test is still coming." "What test?" Minji asked. "Whether the Dranoth will learn from this," Taiyang replied. "Whether they understand that respect cannot be taken. It must be earned. And once lost, it is very hard to get back." Outside the window, stars shone in the darkness. Somewhere out there, the Dranoth Empire was learning a hard lesson, and the rest of the galaxy was watching to see what would happen next. 1 month passed. The situation grew worse for the Dranoth Empire every day. Their economy was shrinking fast. Factories closed because they could not get the materials they needed. Hospitals ran low on medicines. The military had to delay important projects. The Dranoth people started asking questions. Why was this happening? Why could their leaders not fix it? Some blamed the Emperor. Others blamed Prince Philaxus. News reports talked about nothing else. On the colony world of Dranik 7, protests broke out. Thousands of Dranoth gathered in the streets holding signs and chanting. They wanted food. They wanted medicine. They wanted their government to stop being proud and start being smart. Ambassador Wraith watched the news from his office on the Celestial Nexus. His face was tired. He had not slept well in weeks. He tried everything to contact Earth, but every message went unanswered. Every call was ignored. He decided to try something different. He sent a message not to Taiyang, but to Boramhan, Earth's Prime Minister. The message was simple and honest. "We were wrong. We know this now. Please let us talk." The response came 3 days later. It was not from Boramhan. It was from Taiyang. The message said, "When you are ready to take meaningful action, we will listen. Words alone are not enough." Wraith showed the message to the Emperor. Draxion read it several times. He was old enough to understand what it meant. The humans were not playing games. They did not want apologies or promises. They wanted proof that things would change. "What do they want us to do?" the Emperor asked. Wraith took a deep breath. "I believe they want Prince Philaxus to face real consequences. An apology is not enough. They want action that shows we take this seriously." The Emperor looked out the window of his palace. Outside, his empire was struggling. His people were suffering, and it was all because his son had been stupid and cruel. "Send another message," the Emperor said. "Ask them what they want." This time, Taiyang agreed to a video call. When the connection opened, the Emperor saw the human diplomat for the first time. Taiyang looked calm and rested. He did not look angry. He did not look smug. He simply looked like someone waiting patiently for the other person to understand. "Emperor Draxion," Taiyang said with a small nod. "Thank you for contacting us. What do you want?" the Emperor asked directly. He was too tired for games. "Name your price." Taiyang was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "We do not want money. We do not want territory. We do not want power over your empire." "Then what?" "We want your son to learn." The Emperor blinked. "Learn what?" "What it means to serve instead of rule," Taiyang replied. "What it means to work instead of take. What it means to respect others instead of looking down on them." "How do you propose he learns this?" Taiyang leaned forward slightly. "Send him to Earth for 1 year. He will work with our humanitarian programs. He will help people who have nothing. He will see what it means to struggle. And maybe at the end of that year, he will understand why his words caused so much harm." The Emperor was silent. This was not what he expected. He expected demands for resources or political concessions. But this was something completely different. "And if I agree?" the Emperor asked. "You will resume trade?" "We will resume trade," Taiyang confirmed. "But there is one more thing." "What?" "Your empire must implement mandatory cultural training for all diplomats. They must learn about other species. They must understand that no civilization is superior to another. We are all just trying to survive in this galaxy." The Emperor thought about it. It was a small price to pay to save his empire. But it was also a hard pill to swallow. The Dranoth had always believed they were better than everyone else. Changing that belief would not be easy. I agree, the Emperor said finally. I will send my son to Earth, and we will implement the training you request. Taeyang nodded. Good. We will make arrangements. Your son will be safe on Earth, but he will not be comfortable. That is the point. The call ended. The Emperor sat back in his throne and closed his eyes. He had just agreed to send his son away for a year, to a planet the Dranoth had always considered primitive. It felt like defeat. But Ambassador Wraith, who had listened to the entire conversation, felt something different. He felt hope. Maybe this would change things. Maybe this would make the Empire better. When Prince Valaxis heard the news, he was furious. You are sending me to Earth? To work like a common laborer? Father, this is insane. The Emperor looked at his son with cold eyes. This is your fault. You caused this crisis. Now you will fix it. I will not go. You will go, or I will strip you of your title permanently. The Emperor's voice was like ice. You will go and you will learn. Or you will have no place in this empire. Valaxis felt trapped. He had no choice. He agreed, but inside he was full of anger and resentment. He would go to Earth, but he would not change. He would show these humans that he was still better than them. 2 weeks later, a ship arrived at Earth. Prince Valaxis stepped off, wearing simple clothes instead of his usual expensive garments. His face was set in a scowl. Waiting for him was Hyejin Park. Welcome to Earth, she said with a professional smile. I will be your supervisor for the next year. Valaxis looked at her with barely hidden contempt. A woman will supervise me? How appropriate. Hyejin's smile did not change, but her eyes grew colder. Let me make something clear, Prince Valaxis. Here on Earth you have no title. You have no power. You are just another person who needs to learn how to be useful. If you have a problem with that, you can leave right now and face whatever consequences your father decides. The prince said nothing. He just followed her to the transport vehicle. As they drove through Earth cities, Valaxis looked out the window. The buildings were not as tall as those on his homeworld. The technology was not as advanced. But there was something else he noticed. The humans looked happy. They smiled at each other. They helped each other. They seemed to care about more than just themselves. It confused him. How could a species be happy without being superior? Hyejin took him to a small apartment. This is where you will live, she said. It is simple but clean. You will cook your own meals and clean your own space. Tomorrow your work begins. What work? He asked. Helping refugees from war zones. Building homes for people who lost everything. Teaching children who have no parents. Real work. Important work. Valaxis wanted to argue, but he was too tired. He just nodded. That night, alone in his small apartment, the prince looked out at Earth's moon. For the first time in his life, he felt truly alone. No servants, no guards, no one to tell him how great he was, just silence. And the long year ahead. The first morning came too early. Hyejin knocked on the door at 5 a.m. When Valaxis opened it, still half asleep, she handed him work clothes. Simple, rough fabric, nothing like the fine garments he was used to. We leave in 20 minutes, she said. Eat something quick. The day will be long. They drove to the edge of the city where a refugee camp had been set up. Hundreds of humans lived there. People who had fled from natural disasters or conflicts in other regions. They had little. Some had nothing but the clothes on their backs. Your job today, Hyejin explained, is to help build shelters. These people need homes. You will carry materials, hammer nails, whatever is needed. Follow the instructions of the work crew leader. Valaxis looked at the site, mud, dust, people sweating in the hot sun. This was beneath him. This was work for servants, not for someone of his status, but he had no choice. He picked up a heavy load of wood and carried it across the site. His muscles, unused to such work, burned with pain. Sweat dripped down his face. The other workers barely looked at him. To them, he was just another volunteer. By midday, his hands were covered in blisters. His back ached. He wanted to quit, to demand that someone else do this work. But Hyejin watched from nearby, her face showing no sympathy. During lunch break, Valaxis sat alone on a pile of wood. He ate the simple meal Hyejin had packed for him: bread, fruit, water. On his homeworld, he would be eating delicacies prepared by the finest cooks. Here he had a sandwich. An old human man sat down next to him. The man was thin and weathered, with kind eyes and rough hands. You look tired, the man said. I am not used to this kind of work, Valaxis admitted. None of us were at first. the man replied with a gentle smile. But you learn. The body adapts. And more importantly, the heart adapts. Valaxis looked at him. Why are you here? The man gestured toward the half-built shelters. My home was destroyed in an earthquake 3 years ago. People like you helped me rebuild. Now I help others. That is how it works here. We help each other. The prince did not know what to say. On his world, if your home was destroyed, you simply bought another one, or had servants build you a new one. The idea of helping strangers seemed strange. The days turned into weeks. Every morning, Valaxis woke up sore. Every day he worked until his body wanted to collapse. He carried wood. He dug foundations. He painted walls. He did things he had never imagined doing. Slowly, his body grew stronger. The blisters on his hands became calluses. The work became a little easier. But more than his body, something else was changing. He started noticing things. The way the other workers helped each other without being asked. The way they shared their food with those who had less. The way they smiled even when they were tired. One day they finished building a shelter for a family. A woman with 3 children moved in that same afternoon. She cried tears of joy. She thanked everyone who had helped. When she came to Valaxis, she took his hands and said, "Thank you. You have given my children a home." Valaxis felt something strange in his chest. It was not pride like he was used to. It was something different. Something warmer. He had helped someone who needed it, and it felt good. After 3 months, Hyejin moved him to a different assignment. He would now work at a school for orphaned children. His job was to help teach them basic skills and to assist the teachers. The children were between 6 and 12 years old. They had all lost their parents to various tragedies. Some were shy. Some were angry. All of them were hurt in ways that did not show on the outside. At first, Valaxis did not know how to talk to them. Children on his world were kept separate from adults, raised by professionals. But here the teachers expected him to connect with them. One little girl named Yoonji approached him one day. She was 7 years old with big, curious eyes. "Are you from space?" she asked. "Yes," Valaxis replied. "I am from very far away. Is it nice there?" He thought about his answer. "It is different. We have tall buildings and fast ships, but I'm not sure it is nicer than here." "Why not?" "Because here people care about each other. Where I come from, people mostly care about themselves." Yoonji thought about this. "Then your home sounds lonely." Valaxis realized she was right. It was lonely. He had never noticed before because he had never known anything different. Over the next weeks, he grew close to many of the children. He helped them with their lessons. He played games with them during breaks. He listened to their stories and their fears. And slowly he learned something important. These children who had lost everything were still capable of joy. They still hoped. They still dreamed. One evening, after the children had gone to bed, Valaxis sat with one of the teachers, a middle-aged woman named Sunhee. She had been working at the school for 15 years. "Why do you do this?" Valaxis asked her. "You could work somewhere easier, earn more money." Sunhee smiled. "Because these children need someone to believe in them. I was an orphan once too. Someone believed in me. Now I do the same for others. Does it not make you tired, taking care of others all the time?" "Sometimes," she admitted, "but seeing them grow, seeing them succeed, seeing them become good people despite everything they have been through, that gives me energy." Valaxis thought about this for a long time after she left. On his world, people gained energy from power, from status, from being above others. But here, people gained energy from helping others rise. 6 months into his stay on Earth, something happened that changed everything. There was a major earthquake in a nearby region. Thousands of people were injured or homeless. The entire nation mobilized to help. Valaxis volunteered to go to the disaster zone. Hyejin tried to stop him. "You do not have to do this," she said. "It will be dangerous and difficult, I know," Valaxis replied. "But I want to help." For 2 weeks, he worked in the disaster zone. He helped pull people from collapsed buildings. He carried injured people to medical tents. He distributed food and water. He saw terrible things. He saw death and suffering on a scale he had never imagined. But he also saw something beautiful. He saw humans helping each other without hesitation. He saw strangers risk their lives for people they did not know. He saw a species that, despite all their flaws, truly cared about one another. One night, sitting in a tent covered in dust and exhaustion, Valaxis broke down. All the anger he had carried, all the pride, all the arrogance, it shattered. He cried for the first time since he was a child. He cried for the people suffering around him. He cried for the time he had wasted being cruel and selfish. He cried for the person he used to be. Hyejin found him there. She sat down next to him without saying anything. After a while, she spoke quietly. "You are not the same person who arrived here 6 months ago." Valaxis wiped his eyes. "No," he said, "I am not, and I do not want to be that person ever again." "Good," Hyejin said, "because the galaxy needs people who understand what you now understand. It needs leaders who have seen real suffering and learned real compassion." The final months of Valaxis's year on Earth passed quickly. He continued working with the orphaned children, and he also began giving talks about his experiences to other young people. He spoke honestly about his mistakes and what he had learned. News of his transformation spread beyond Earth. Reporters from other planets wanted to interview him. They wanted to know how a proud Dranoth prince had changed so completely. But Valaxis refused most interviews. He said he was still learning and was not ready to preach to others. One day Taeyang Kim came to visit him at the school. It was the first time they had spoken since that day at the Celestial Nexus. Valaxis felt nervous when he saw the diplomat walking across the schoolyard. They sat on a bench under a tree. Children played nearby, their laughter filling the air. "I owe you an apology," Valaxis said. His voice was quiet but firm. "What I said to you that day was cruel and wrong. I was ignorant and arrogant. I am sorry." Taeyang was quiet for a moment, watching the children play. Then he said, "I accept your apology. But more importantly, I see that you have changed. Words are easy. Change is hard. You chose the hard path. Can I ask you something?" Philaxis said, "Of course, why did you walk away that day? Why did you not fight back?" Taeyang smiled slightly. "Because fighting you with words would have proven nothing. You would have won that fight anyway. You had the crowd on your side. The Dranoth have power. I could not match that with words. Then what was the point of walking away?" "To make you face consequences," Taeyang explained. "When I walked away, I took something from you. Not your pride, you still had that. But I took away your victory. You wanted a reaction. You wanted to see me angry or broken. Instead, you saw nothing. That stayed with you, did it not?" Philaxis nodded slowly. "Yes, I thought about it every day. I kept wondering what it meant." "It meant that humans do not play by the same rules as everyone else," Taeyang said. "We do not respond to insults with insults. We respond with action, real meaningful action, and that in the end is more powerful than any words." "I understand now," Valaxis said. "You were teaching me a lesson I was too blind to see at the time." "I was not trying to teach you anything," Taeyang replied. "I was protecting my people, but I am glad you learned something anyway." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Valaxis said, "What will you do now? Will you stay in diplomacy?" "For a while longer," Taeyang said. "There is still much work to do. But someday I would like to retire and teach. Pass on what I have learned to the next generation. That sounds peaceful." Taeyang looked at him. "And you? What will you do when you return to your empire?" Valaxis took a deep breath. "I want to change things. My people believe we are superior to everyone else. That belief has made us cruel. I want to show them another way. I want to teach them what I learned here. That will not be easy," Taeyang warned. "People do not like to change their beliefs." "I know," Valaxis said, "but I have to try. I owe it to all the people I have met here, and I owe it to the person I used to be, to prove that even he could change." The year ended. On his last day on Earth, Valaxis said goodbye to everyone he had worked with. The children at the school cried when he left. Little Yunji hugged him tightly. "Will you come back?" she asked. "I hope so," he told her. "And when I do, I want to hear about all the amazing things you have done." Hyejin accompanied him to the spaceport. Over the years, she had watched him transform from an arrogant boy into a thoughtful young man. She felt proud, though she would never admit it out loud. "Thank you," Valaxis said to her before boarding his ship, "not just for supervising me, but for believing that I could change." Hyejin nodded. "Do not waste this second chance. The galaxy is watching you. I will not waste it," he promised. When Valaxis returned to his homeworld, he was not the same person who had left. His father, Emperor Draxion, noticed the change immediately. The boy who had left was full of pride and emptiness. The young man who returned was full of purpose and humility. Over the following months, Valaxis worked to reform Dranoth diplomatic practices. He pushed for mandatory cultural education, He advocated for treating other species as equals. Many resisted. Some called him a traitor who had been brainwashed by humans. But slowly things began to change. The Emperor supported his son's efforts. Ambassador Wraith became one of his strongest allies. Together, they started to shift the Empire's attitude from superiority to cooperation. A year after his return, Valaxis attended another summit at the Celestial Nexus. This time, he went as an official diplomat, not as a prince seeking glory. When he entered the Great Hall, many species watched him with curiosity. He saw Taiyang standing near the same window where they had first met. Valaxis walked over to him. They shook hands like equals. "It is good to see you again," Taiyang said. "The feeling is mutual," Valaxis replied. They talked for a while about the changes happening in both their civilizations. Then, during a break in the meetings, they stood together as other diplomats passed by. Many nodded respectfully to both of them. One ambassador from a smaller species approached them. She was nervous but determined. "Excuse me," she said. "I wanted to thank you both. What happened between you and how you resolved it gave my people hope. It showed us that even powerful empires can learn and change." Valaxis felt humbled. "We both made mistakes," he said. "The important thing is that we learned from them." After she left, Taiyang turned to Valaxis. "You are doing good work. Keep it up," Valaxis smiled. "I learned from the best years past." The story of the human who walked away and the prince who learned humility became famous across the galaxy. It was told in schools. It was discussed in diplomatic academies. It became a symbol of how conflicts could be resolved not through war or endless arguments, but through meaningful action and genuine change. Earth's position in the galactic community grew stronger. Not because humans demanded respect, but because they earned it. Other species saw how humans handled insults with dignity. They saw how humans chose consequences over revenge. They saw strength in restraint. The Dranoth Empire, under Valaxis's influence, became one of Earth's strongest allies. The two civilizations worked together on numerous projects. They showed the galaxy that even former rivals could become friends if both sides were willing to change. Taiyang eventually retired from active diplomacy, as he had planned. He became a professor, teaching young diplomats about strategy, patience, and the power of choosing your battles wisely. His most famous lesson was about the day he walked away from Prince Valaxis. Sometimes he would tell his students, "The most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Not because you are weak, not because you are afraid, but because you understand that some lessons cannot be taught with words. They must be learned through experience." Valaxis also became a teacher, traveling to different planets to speak about his experiences. He never hid from his past. He openly admitted his mistakes and talked about his journey from arrogance to understanding. Young people from many species found inspiration in his story. Decades later, when both men were much older, they met again at a ceremony. The Galactic Council was honoring them for their contributions to peace and understanding. They stood on a stage together in front of representatives from hundreds of worlds. The ceremony organizer asked them to share their thoughts. Taiyang spoke first. He kept it simple. "Real strength," he said, "is not about who can shout the loudest or hit the hardest. It is about who has the wisdom to know when to act and when to step back. It is about building bridges instead of walls." Then Valaxis spoke. "I was once the kind of person who believed superiority came from birth, from power, from the ability to look down on others. Earth taught me that true superiority comes from lifting others up, from serving instead of being served, from learning instead of assuming you already know everything." The audience applauded. But for Taiyang and Valaxis, the applause did not matter much. What mattered was the change they had helped create. What mattered was the example they had set. After the ceremony, they sat together one last time, looking out at the stars through a large window. The same kind of window where their story had begun so many years ago. "Do you ever regret it?" Valaxis asked. "Walking away that day?" Taiyang shook his head. "No, it was the right choice. The only choice, really. It changed my life," Valaxis said quietly. "It changed many lives," Taiyang replied. "That is the thing about choices. You never know how far the ripples will reach." They sat in comfortable silence, two old friends who had once been enemies, watching the galaxy spin slowly around them. And somewhere out there on countless worlds, their story continued to inspire others to choose wisdom over pride, action over words, and humanity over hate. Because in the end, that is what true strength looks like. Not the power to destroy, but the power to transform. Not the ability to win every fight, but the wisdom to know which fights matter. And sometimes the greatest victory comes from simply walking away.